Hello and welcome to Solutionary TV. I am your host, Dr. Tatiana. We have been talking for quite some time about bringing humanity, bringing society back into a balance where there is greater equality, greater compassion, and where we can really begin evolving into an empowered global system of society and humanity. And tonight is no exception to that, because part of that whole power struggle and the imbalance that we have in society also exists still after all of these thousands of years within our gender struggles in society, and certainly in the workplace. So we have got a very pertinent guest this evening, a trailblazer for women who spearheads this very issue and is absolutely determined to bring more men and women into an understanding as to why it is still taking place, particularly in the workforce. Help me introduce Leslie Flowers, and let me tell you a little bit about her. Leslie is a certified speaker, coach, and consultant. She developed her core leadership strengths while serving 45 years in the corporate arena, so she's been boots on the ground in the trenches, and the last 20 years of personal developmental study. Her mission is to crush the wage gap by 2025, which is 30 years before it has been analyzed and expected to take place. Leslie wrote her second Amazon bestseller, Champion, in 2014, to outline in simple terms the exact process required for women to grow their careers and their businesses to match the context of business in the 21st century. It is an unofficial translation of Think and Grow Rich into the 21st century terms that are easy to follow and to implement. Leslie has been facilitating teaching masterminds for 10 years. I have actually participated in those and can vouch for them. And the last 5 devoted to women asking for what they deserve, knowing and actively asking for what they deserve and getting paid for it. Leslie created her foundational program, The 8 Essentials of Performance and Achievement, 5 years ago to provide a powerful resource for her clients and a way for others to become successful by using that program to plan successes every single quarter. She also calls herself the Nanapreneur. As a proud grandmother, she divides her time between business and family, which many women have been doing for ages, and all of us trying to find that harmony and balance. So thank you for being here and holding that vision, Leslie. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thanks, Tatiana. I am thrilled to be here. I appreciate your having me. And yes, that is my mission. Every day when I'm not being a nanopreneur or Uber nana driver, I am working one-on-one day in and day out for women to actually gain the value within themselves so that they can ask for what they deserve and be paid for what they deserve and for which they're capable.
Well, and we know that that should make perfect sense. We have societies throughout the world that have been matriarchal societies that are still functioning that way. We know that Iceland in particular is not necessarily a matriarchal society, but it's a really harmonized balance of women in politics, women in corporate business. During the 2007-2008, financial crisis, they held those bankers accountable. People went to prison and they did not collapse as a financial structure, whereas the rest of the world was wrought with a lot of cyclical issues that spun out of that. And so we know that having the wisdom and also the compassion and I would have to say some of the negotiation skills that women have a tendency to have is really important. Why are we still dealing with this as an issue right now? And actually, just to the point, we'll go to the minutia of it because we know that it has to do with the power struggles within individuals. But you've been in corporate and you've also led in entrepreneurial ventures with women. What's still going on with this, Leslie?
So is your question, why are we still not earning what we ought to be earning? Is it that simple?
Well, let's go ahead and take it to the minutia, yes, and we can back out from there, but that's definitely a point that we need to get to.
So it's actually pretty simple. And I have found over the years that from my clients that when we're confused about things, we don't take any action. And if you look at this, men have pretty well run businesses for 5,000 years or 200 generations.
Hmm.
That's just the way it is.
Hmm.
It's not right, wrong, or good or bad. And women have been managing the home front and
Hmm.
all that goes along with it. And it could cross lines where the woman at home manages the finances. Now, but what's happened here is we now have only been in business full time for about 3 decades.
Hmm.
So, how would we come into business with all the skills and understanding for negotiating and with the confidence that men who have this on an inherent level, because actually they grew up inside the context and developing the context for business success, we wouldn't.
Hmm.
So, we first have to take a look at what do we know and what don't we know,
Hmm.
and not to beat ourselves up because we're not earning what we should. The statistics are frightening because it makes perfect sense. It's no different, Tatiana, for the man who goes home and becomes the house husband and they switch jobs. There is a learning curve for men to acclimate socially and behaviorally being a house husband and taking care of the children and getting kids to dance lessons and everything else and engaging with women. There's a learning curve.
Right.
Well, the same thing is true for women.
Hmm.
So we first have to give ourselves permission to be okay that we don't know as much as we know. However, what I've learned is through the last 10 years, and particularly 5 years working with women, that when women learn the behaviors and ways to influence that men have inherently, that they become more influential and more powerful. Now, and so the men who inherently step up to the plate, even if they're not qualified, if they knew about how their confidence was built, they would step up even more. But right now, it's a habit. So therefore, there's no power with it. For women, the work I do is teaching women those exact inherent principles that have evolved with men. And then the program shows them how to practice and observe and apply. This is a process.
Hmm.
It's a right, and we have to be all in with the process and be okay that we don't know everything and be hungry and thirsty to find it out.
Well, I'm excited to see where you're going to take our viewers tonight in terms of better understanding, like you said, if where there's confusion around an issue, how do we
That's right.
solve it? We really need to get a very spatial view. And so I want to pull back just a little bit. You're a
Sure.
coach. You
Mhm.
work with men and women. I want to make it very clear to our audience that you have a wide breadth of clientele in every area from corporate and entrepreneur and those that are working on themselves in self-empowerment. For a baseline, most coaches, I know it was part of my education, I'm sure you've come across it too. Men and women not only think differently and emotionally feel differently, they habituate differently. The studies have demonstrated, if you go back
Mhm.
to our primal code, and this is important for our audience to understand that confidence piece going forward, men and women are engendered or entrained to survive with a very different motivator. Men, for instance, are going to find that shame is the very worst thing that could happen to them in any society, and they will have a tendency, like good old Spartans, to march off into the desolation to be able to prove themselves before they would be shamed before the tribe or earn their place. And so for them, so much has to do with pride and with being valued and being seen. Whereas women, our greatest fear is to be abandoned. So, what's the first thing we do if there is going to be a power struggle? We're going to compromise. We're going to get everybody together and find ways to collaborate. We over communicate. And we're going to, try to find a place where we are not looking like we're self ingratiating. We have a tendency to be less less of the me mongerers, you know, when it comes to this. There are women in business that are really bombastic and have taken on a masculine model, but we're really engendered differently, aren't we, Leslie? And when that's a karmic thing as well as a tribal thing, a lot of women don't even realize where that lack of confidence or that desire to yield comes from. Can you speak to that? I know you deal with this a lot
Yeah.
with your people.
Yeah, let's start for the people who are listening, men and women. I do primarily work with women and a few smart men. So if you consider yourself in that category, yes. If you don't, no. Okay. So here's what happens. The first thing, the superficial thing that women and men can do to become aware of the simple superficial things that occur, for example, in networking. Just consider a networking situation or a business meeting. There are certain behaviors that are accepted, and they are the behaviors of the context of business, which are masculine. Women are a complete clash. As you pointed out, Tatiana, our skills are quite different. So let's take, for example, the way women and men communicate in business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this, I address this in my book, and it's very clear, and you can walk yourself through. There's about a half a dozen behaviors that women do automatically that clash with the context of success. And what the result of that is a perpetual not listening by business leaders, both men and women, to women.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens automatically. It is not intentional. So here's what happened. You're in a meeting and there are men and women at the table, and you say something and no one says anything, and someone else says something and a gentleman says the precise words that you used, and everybody goes, yeah, what a great idea. And you lean over to your friend and say, aren't those my exact words? The result is from these behaviors, which I'm going to share with you what they are because it's not a secret, you may be unaware of them and you can chip away at them. Again, this is the superficial, the outward behavioral.
Mm-hmm.
My work also goes into values and beliefs, etc., which is the next level. So you're at a networking event, you're at a business meeting, and a man will speak in bullet points. Da, 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 da. And as you pointed out, the women will tell the whole story. Oh my God, we have to go down. You have to know every detail. Well, of course, when you're managing a family, right, and you're keeping the peace, you are going to nourish and nurture everyone. It doesn't work in business. You lose them. Their eyes glass over. So one of the things is if you're a person that has to tell the whole story, what you will do is simply practice before you go into the meeting or the networking event. What are the 3 or 4 points you want to make? Put them on an index card and only say that. Then watch what happens. You'll see a difference. Now, another thing that women do and men do differently is, and I know you're going to love this one. Men don't say I'm sorry and they don't cry. In business, there's no crying in business or in baseball, right? But our nature, 5,000 years of evolution, has us tearful, emotional. We're empathetic, we're sympathetic, we like to talk a lot, we want everybody to feel really good. But that's clashing with the context for success. Now, that doesn't mean that you're any less a woman. It means that you say, I apologize, let me get right on that.
Mm-hmm.
And you bite your lip rather than cry. Typically I can remember myself, oh, baby, and I'm so sorry. And, that's our natural response. It doesn't work in business. So if you're a person who cries and says, I'm sorry, you begin to purposely say, I apologize. Let me get right on that. Also, the word sorry has a big trigger. It is demotivating, isn't it? Especially in the South. Sorriness is about as low as you can go. It's referred to in the southeast of the United States as lack of worth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a trigger. So when people hear sorry, depending on where they're from, they're going to relate it to their perception of sorry, and it's low. So if you say, I apologize, there's no trigger. So there's two things. One is speaking and telling the whole story. The other is not crying and saying you're sorry ever, right? You don't have to say you're sorry, but it's a habit. It
Leslie,
is
let's
a,
touch on that because I like to wax metaphysical whenever it's appropriate, and let's talk about
okay,
what's actually happening there. When
okay.
when a woman gets highly emotive after being corrected by a male or even by another female or by a larger body that's managing them, and they
Mhm.
go into a highly emotive state and maybe get tearful or a little overwrought and go into deep apologies, what's actually happening is there is an energy loss. There is an exchange where it is going to the individuals that are correcting them, and maybe an excessive amount of release where they're giving up too much power when it isn't actually necessary to do so. We can all handle correction without coming unglued or without losing our station or losing our dignity. And I think that it's some skills that women need to remind themselves of when they feel shamed or embarrassed and they care. Remember, primally, they're all about cooperation, because abandonment or getting fired would be the worst thing that could happen, right? It isn't about the shame. It's I'm going to lose my clan, my kin, my ability to provide for my clan, my kin. And so we get emotional because of that threat. But if we recognize I made a mistake, I'm regretful I made a mistake, and I can see that I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean I owe these people so much of my energy in the exchange. Would you agree?
I agree 100% with that. And it is intellectually, that is the case. However, emotionally, in order to check that trigger or reptilian emotion, you are not going to be in an intellectual or objective, right, or responsive state. You are now in the lowest level of awareness where you are subjective and reactive.
Sure.
So, what I found is that you're absolutely 100% correct. The way to actually modify your behavior so you start seeing a change in how people are relating to you because your energy level is not depleted then is through first observation. Go and watch someone else do one of these things and observe for yourself for social proof that people stop listening and that the energy becomes depleted. Then you practice it yourself and you watch. So we're absolutely, you're explaining energetically what is happening. I'm kind of at the place where they don't get that intellectually as we do. They are in the throes of tears and upset. And at that point, there's nothing else to do. So, how is it that we actually modify the behavior without breaking down? And we learn through repetition. It's the mother of all laws. Through a repetition is learning. And so we have to continue to practice this in spaced intervals over time. We have to see it. Even when we know it works, we still forget,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even though we've seen social proof and we have perfect faith and we get how it works and we acknowledge this is who we are and we need to work on it, we still get upset.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a few of them. The other one is our physical demeanor. Now, depending on your industry, it's always smart to dress to match the context that you're stepping into. Very rarely do men wear low cut blouses, lots of jewelry. They don't put on lipstick and they don't wiggle and jiggle and they stand a certain way. Now, I'm not saying that women shouldn't be feminine, but if there are a half a dozen behavioral attributes that are having people not listen to you, you can modify that by wearing something a little less flamboyant when
Mm-hmm.
you're in a business meeting. It doesn't mean you're any less feminine. You really want to become a chameleon. Now, this is the animal that takes on the color of whatever its backdrop is. And certainly for women, as you get into this and you start to discover this outward part that you can control very easily by first being aware of it and second, practicing the one that you're having the most trouble on, right? We want to mirror or mimic what is so.
Mm-hmm.
What is so, it does has nothing to do with being a woman or a man, is like mirroring the context, right? And then your own personality and your own self-expression will come through. If you don't do it, people continue not to listen to you. And
Mm-hmm.
if they don't hear you, businesses, it's a huge mistake. Because if you have both men and women at the table, it affects the top and bottom line. Women and men together come up with the best solutions. It's the best combination of energy, isn't it? And yet, we're not listening to women. And it's women and men business leaders. And that is why it is so important for men to be involved in this, for them to recognize, hey, you know what? I stopped listening to her. She did say that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I noticed that I didn't acknowledge that, but when Joe Blow over here said the exact same words, I was all about it.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? This is more in your realm, right? In the what happened part.
Well, the
Does this make sense?
consciousness is really important, isn't it, Leslie? I'm hearing you
Yeah.
get into the minutia, which is important. And if you're coaching anyone, you got to go into the minutia, right? You've got to talk about what happened in that situation. What could you have done? Where are you reflective about where you lost power or where that conversation went awry? But we don't want women to become masculinized. We've seen
No.
that look. I mean, people joke about Hillary Clinton, the way that she dresses, and other women who are wearing suits that are more masculine than men. Look at the beautiful color you're wearing right now. I would hope that that would always be, your very freeing sense of this is my personal style. But I think the emotional intelligence that I'm hearing you try to address around the women being conscious and recognizing that the way that they would handle networking with a bunch of ladies at a power luncheon where they would tell the whole story about what happened with their grandchild isn't always the face and the voice and the conciseness you want to bring into a business opportunity, that there's a lot more emotional intelligence and consciousness and mindfulness around the way they deliver. Is that what you're
And
saying, Leslie?
yes, and that's the superficial part. And I work in the minutia. I got to tell you, I really never lead with coach because coaches have a bad rap. Coaching for me is a tool. I'm a teacher and I'm a charismatic truth guide. I will ask you the questions. However, I know that you already have the answers. So I will present you to be your best self. For example, in my mastermind, during the mastermind portion, everyone coaches everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a teaching piece, then there's an application piece. So for me, it is the minutia. It's this superficial piece. What do I do right now? And the reason I brought up coaching is because honestly, people have been hanging out the shingle. I'm a coach, and there's a real bad rap out there. And my feeling about coaching is it's a powerful tool, right? It is a tool that I use and I teach my clients, but they aren't bona fide coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So I will actually I will guide you, right, into where I believe you will best find your greatness. So I know we got a little bit off track there. Um, I'm not an average coach. I use it. That's what I would say. I use that skill along with a lot of other skills. And you and I both know that I've studied quantum physics, metaphysics, not to the extent you have. I've studied religions all over the world, Krishna consciousness, all sorts of spiritual, and I'm an expert in the principles of success in Think and Grow Rich and universal law. So I wrap it all up in a pretty bow. And my unique ability, Tatiana, and you can attest if this is true or not, is the ability to share complex concepts in a very simple way in bite-sized nuggets so that you can immediately take action. So there is no confusion. What did she mean? What did she mean?
Mm-hmm.
I can rephrase, I can reframe, and I can do it being context competent with any group. I could do it with plumbers, and I could do it with real estate people, and I can do it with women or men. It's all the same. The training is all the same. The principles are all the same. The trick is to be able to present it in a way that it's gotten, and a person says, I got it. I can do that.
Right.
Would you
Well, and
agree?
and I think that, oh well, there's no question that that is your goal and that's your passion and that's how you deliver. And I get what you're saying about coaching, and I don't want to overuse and get stuck on words, but any good coach that's been through a strenuous curriculum understands that they are meant to ask good questions because their client always does have the answer, exactly as you said.
Yes, yes.
What in this case is probably unique to what you're offering is that a lot of these women don't know why primally, literally, it's a karmic, it's an engendered
Mhm.
habituation to certain responses they may not even understand. You're talking about 5,000 years in the cultures that they've come from, where they are expected to be quiet, that maybe just a few generations ago a woman would have been choked out for speaking too loudly, or backhanded for interjecting in a male conversation, or or she was a slave, or a concubine. So we have to remember that there is DNA memory, and that there is a fight or flight reaction that we all have. And women coming into power in these positions as we transition to a more harmoniously balanced society. The pendulum swung real far in patriarchy. It's going to need to swing back. We have matriarchies that exist all over the world right now, and I did a little homework on them, and you and I talked about it before. What's
Yeah,
the difference between our society? We're still westernized in kind of an old Judeo-Christian. It had a
right.
lot of religious connotation to it, but it was a power struggle. And as we swing back, having women understand that it isn't that they need to beat themselves up. It's not going to always come through as another self-help book. It's also part of just conscious, mindful monitoring of their own trigger behaviors. Wouldn't you say, Leslie, and part of the work they do with
I,
you?
yeah, I would. And the challenge really is, excuse me, women want more. I mean, there is no question. I work with women all the time. They want more,
Hmm.
and men too. But there's a distinction here. They want more, but they're not willing to do what it takes. They'll throw money at something and then complain that they didn't get any results. That somehow it's the same thing with the health club, right? They didn't have the real desire behind it. They didn't have the persistence. They didn't really, 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 really want it. It would be a nice to have, and how come I don't have it and everybody else does, or it seems like everybody else does? All you have to do is take a look at health clubs in January. When you're tapping your foot, you can't get on a machine, and everybody's wild about the health club. February, you go in and there's plenty of machines, and there's people on either side of you that you can talk to. March, you're in a desert.
Okay, so
So
relate this back to what is it that they're being ineffective about? What's the lack of follow through as it pertains to this wage gap in women holding their value in the workplace, Leslie?
because they don't know what they want. That's the first place. They don't really know what they want. And then when they find out, they're not really willing to do the work. Now, that is the result of 10 years of teaching this material. Once I teach it, they're willing. But I first have to get you to be willing to go all in and open your mind and to learn new things and apply them. New things scare people. So the reality is only about 3 out of 100 ever reach awareness. And I wanted to ask you, do you think it's necessary for women to understand it karmically first, or at all? Or should they go into the actual modification of their behavior, which I'm suggesting, which works very nicely, pretty quickly, where you start to see a result, or both? Because some
Yeah.
of the women, I don't know, that really want to know, they just really want to get that. But I don't know. I want to hear what you think about
Well,
that.
as someone who takes a holistic worldview, I would
Yeah.
say as within, so without, as above, so below. How do we understand how to externalize if we don't understand what motivates us unconsciously? So, yes, unquestionably, help women to understand it's habituated, it's it's in the bloodstream, it's in the cellular memory and intelligence. We're afraid that we're going to stir the boat and we're going to further experience levels of abandonment, and we're hardwired this way. We're mammalian. And so if you get that, you cut yourself some slack. You can laugh a little bit about, boy, I really crapped the bed on that last business call. I all I needed to do was be quiet more, and nobody would have known, that I was less prepared. Sometimes we throw ourselves under the bus as women, and we're overly honest because we're used to communicating, and we over communicate when we need to under communicate. Well, we wouldn't beat ourselves up so badly if we understood in a better context what's
So
motivating some of that behavior. So your skills and your tools, married with greater spatial understanding, I think is the best marriage possible.
So I want to share something with you that I've noticed with women and women's groups, to your point about how we throw ourselves under the bus. And I cover this in my book, and I've studied this for a long time. It's happened to me, and it's happened to most women I know. So because we have only been in business 30 years, bona fide,
Right,
right? And I couple that really with the divorce rate and a lot of other things, which is a different conversation.
right.
Because we've only been in business that long, we only have a certain amount of information. And here's what we do when we get together with other women.
Hmm.
So we decide that we're going to go from corporate and we're going to become an entrepreneur, or we're going to take on multiple streams of income, or we're going to stay in corporate and we're also going to, start an entrepreneurial venture. This is smart, by the way, because in today's society, having multiple streams of income is a very smart way to go. There's less worry, okay, because you have income coming from different places. So you find a women's group that you like very much, and you meet the women and you invest your money. And you have your one-on-ones and you go to the meetings about a half a day killed every week, or I shouldn't say killed, invested every week. And things are going along nicely. Maybe you get a referral. And then in the meeting, you hear someone say, boy, that woman's got a fat butt. And they're referring to you.
Does this
And so you
happen
go, oh
still?
my, huh?
Does this
Yeah.
still happen?
So then you go, well, this isn't the group for me. So any momentum you have drops. Now you're going to go out and find another women's group. Oh, there's one. There's such nice people. I love those women. You invest your money and your time and you have your one-on-ones and the time goes by and maybe you'll get a referral and oh my God, 6 months, you might even get a client. Then they tell your best friend that she has a fat ass. So then you go, well, this isn't the group for me. And all that momentum drops. Now here's what's happening. Okay, this is the fun. Oops, sorry, I almost hit the camera here, right?
Yeah, you're
Okay,
disappearing on us, Leslie. Bring it back.
I
Bring
know,
it
I know.
back.
I'm just very excited. I love this story because it's fun. So men over 200 generations, they sort of have three ways that they kick around ideas: business, their men's groups where it's kind of a quasi mastermind, and then there's belly up to the bar BS, right?
You
And so
missed
they
the golfers entirely. Where did they go? Which category?
men's groups get in
Okay.
the middle, but anyway, there's a three. Okay, women only have one. So we've come into business collapsing together the belly up to the bar BS, narky, snarky stuff with business. And once I share this with them, they separate it, but they're unaware.
Sure.
And it only takes one person in a woman's group to deflate that. Now, let me tell you about confidence because you brought that up. I have figured out what builds confidence, and it works
Okay,
all the
let's hear it.
time, every time. Want to know?
We're
Okay.
ready.
All right, all right. Confidence is a muscle that grows in direct proportion to its use. And the way we use it is through consistent achievement in spaced intervals over time. Achievement, I mean by goals, tasks, purposes, intention, they're all the same to me, stuff you want. When you're in a woman's group and you're going along like this and you're achieving and the confidence is building, as soon as that one snarky comment is made, unintentionally sometimes, but not very nice, it's the pin in the balloon of your confidence. And then it drops and you've got to start again because you've been going along achieving. The key to success and abundance and is confidence through consistent achievement over time. And I've never met one person to this day that has ever taken a bona fide goal setting course in high school or college. Oh, maybe there was something in the Army and maybe in a marketing course. So, coupled with the fact that neither men nor women know how to set a goal to achieve. So, it's particularly critical that I teach women the 12 laws of achievement, that when you use as many of them as you can, will give you your best shot at success. So now women have to separate those behaviors to more respect one another. And once they learn it, they can do it. We're very smart once we become aware. We just weren't aware of that. but I have hundreds of people that have said to me, yeah, this is me, beep, 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 for years. Money going and no traction. So that is kind of a fun story about how it happened for me. And on this journey was to realize that the people that are making the snarky comments, well, of course, they don't have a lot of confidence themselves, but it's not really about judging them. They're unaware of another way to be. And as soon as a woman becomes aware of a new way to be that gives them better results and feels good energetically, right? And they're riding high, they'll do it. So our work is to make them aware of their infinite potential, isn't it? Really?
Well, I think there's no question that their potential is infinite based on application. But what you're really also speaking to is some of the consciousness and mindfulness that's going on in some of these big, particular Silicon Valley corporations, where there's meditation and there is um, group practices around nonviolent communication skills and gestalt therapy, because we can't bring all of ourselves, all of our story, all of our insecurities, all of our troubles to every single encounter with every
That's right.
individual we have, whether you're sitting at your kid's, soccer game, or you're talking to your neighbor at the mailbox, or you're in the middle of, a high level Fortune 100 company board meeting. We have to also mitigate and balance and titrate exactly how much of us shows up. So it sounds to me like you are discovering with some of these females in particular that you work with is that they bring too much of themselves to a professional encounter and end up feeling that they have maybe had an energy or a power loss, or that they were misinterpreted, or that they were unconscious of how people perceive them, and then they didn't have thick enough skin when something slipped out. So let's talk to them holding their femininity, being mindful of how much they can emote, how much they can share, what is appropriate to share, those sound bites, like you said, 3 sound bites, and
Mhm.
still be in a whole place themselves where they don't feel like they are not true to themselves. How do you help them get around that, Leslie?
Well, like I shared before, the first thing is to just become an observer
Mm-hmm.
and start looking at these things. Now, I'm going to tell you truthfully, I no longer work with those women. So my first 5 years was with the woman who didn't know and who was reluctant and unaware and was just really discovering everything. And I want to share this with the people that are listening, because those people might be there. Now, I am fortunate enough in the last 5 years to begin to work with women that are willing to do what it takes. They're willing to step through their fear. They trust me. The work that I'm teaching actually is universal. I didn't start it. It's been around for years. I mean, Napoleon Hill 100 years ago actually became the 20th century's best reporter. He was not a success expert. He went out and reported on what successful people did. And the unique thing about that book is that it's 5,000 years of consolidation of business principles,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the 12 laws of achievement that I've derived not only come from that, but Wallace Wattles' work and my own work and all sorts of things that I've done over the last 10 years. And I've been using it to prove that women, once they learn and they're willing, they will catapult their business. So what they can do, first of all, is become aware, right? Just listen to the things I've said and go get social proof. Then they want to practice, right? They want to practice changing one thing. It doesn't even have to be the worst thing. Let's say that you're a hugger. We didn't bring that up, but in a male dominated business world, do not run up and hug men, right? You shake hands. Now, if you're all women, I have no issue with that. But if you wiggle and jiggle and you have lots of jewelry and you have big cleavage and you're crossing your legs and putting lipstick on at the same time, crying, saying you're sorry, and telling the whole story, people aren't listening to you in business, right? And all of it is understandable. As Tatiana said, all of those skills are important. Well, maybe not the cleavage part, but
Oh,
anyway,
wait a minute,
all
though, that we got to respond to the archetypes because there are four key archetypes according to Carolyn Mace, and one of them is the prostitute. And what women learned on their way back in before Too Much Gloria Steinem was if you wanted to get into business, you had to catch attention and you had to work with your inner gypsy or your inner Jezebel, and it would get you rather far. So women are slowly backing that off, aren't they, Leslie, and recognizing that sends the wrong message. I still want to be beautiful. I want to be lovely. I want to be elegant, but I don't want to be distracting if I'm really trying to grow my career. Would you say that that is
yes,
a
and it's
direction?
not, it's more than that. It's that people aren't hearing you. Yeah, I'm telling you, I've watched the eyes glaze over. If you don't modify these behaviors, then you're just going to continue doing the same thing. And your ideas are perfect. They're important. Your message is unique. Think about this. There are people out there that are waiting to hear what you have to say, and they can only hear it from you. And so it's darn selfish not to get your confidence, not to grow in awareness of your infinite potential, not to go out and test these things for yourself. And men, be watching. And to change the subject a second, I got to tell you about these men, these few smart men. So I see them in between men and women in this kind of nebulous lost cloud. So they're not part of the men compartmentalized rock eyes that still exist out there. And they're absolutely not a woman either. They're lost. They're gravitatory. They see the advantage of intuition and developing your intuition. They see it. So they now are stuck, or they can't be still, but they are stuck in between the old men, the old guard, which they don't want to go back to, and the women that they're gravitating toward and don't exactly know how to be embraced. So think about those men. There's a whole lot of them that really don't fit in anywhere. What do you think about that, Tatiana?
I think that we're in a very transitional society all around on this one. And the truth of the matter is that we're experiencing a peak in human evolution. Where human economy and industry is going looks like we're going to have a lot of AI taking over our business, and we really need to individuate and become reflective of our personal skills, our worth, our value, and look around at society and find a whole new reset. So yes, the men that are dealing with strong women that, you know, would be insulted if they picked up the check when they met each other on their first match date, are those confused men that are right in between are experiencing the same graduation and transition we all are. And then we have women that also want to be women and they want gentlemen, and they do want to be lovely in the workplace, but they also want to be treated seriously, and they want someone looking and making eye contact instead of looking at the girls, right? And they want to get paid equally. So I've got a good question for you, Leslie. This came up recently with a family member of mine. They mentioned that they
Yeah.
had been out in the corporate world, and then had gone back to get their bachelor's degree and some further certifications, and then got placed in some of these higher positions, but were expected to take on a lot amount of work because they had a lot of diversified skills, right? A lot of opportunities to kind of sort of do some co-managing in this department and oversight of this one and working underneath this particular supervisor. They were told at a recent business meeting in front of their colleagues that they had been given a promotion. They had not heard about this behind closed doors. They had not been asked if they were interested in the promotion. They were told in front of everyone else in an open forum that they had been promoted without any conversation about increase of pay and without any reason to expect an increase of pay. And when they, being the good team player that they are, strong, you know, work ethic, good working mom, kids at home, putting them through different classes and Boy Scouts and whatever else, when she went and approached that supervisor after, rather than saying, hey, that was inappropriate, how is it that I was not made aware that you were considering me for promotion, which I appreciate, but you didn't bother to clear that with me so that I was prepared. I didn't get to hear I would be compensated. I didn't understand the breadth of my duties. Instead, she was told, you show how well you can do these jobs that I've just announced to everyone you're going to do, and then we will talk about increase. Would men put up with this kind of thing, Leslie? Where would you tell a female client that found themselves in that position that they might
Well,
have
well,
given too much power away and how to get some of that back and be valued for their contributions thus far?
so I would first be grateful and say thank you very much. And then I would, right, that doesn't bother me as much. And I'd take a look at Comey and these people who were men who were fired by tweets. Um, I have seen, I actually was fired by phone in a meeting that was at the other end. I used to work in startup companies as the executive admin and the only one for startups for about 10 years in Research Triangle Park. And there was a coup around 2002 with a startup that I was involved with that had already done 2 rounds of funding and millions and millions of dollars, fabulous products. And the coup occurred, and everybody was in the conference room, and I was manning the front door and was on the phone. And they said, "Oh, and Leslie won't be needed anymore either." Now, for about 4 seconds, when I heard that, the blood began to rise in my ears, like, how dare they, right? The old reptilian energy, those SOBs, etc. But at the fifth second, I was able to say to myself, well, you know what? They don't appreciate me anymore, and I'm really good at what I do. So this is actually a gift because I get to leave and go find someplace else that really, really appreciates me.
Right. And reset the whole bar again without giving away too much power and having there be an expectation that you're not interested in engaging in those
Right.
future relationships.
That person, that woman,
Hmm.
or the man, or the woman who was given that, I would first acknowledge it. This happens all too often. In fact, one of the examples I use is that when men have this confidence to step up in business without being capable, what happens in corporate is the women end up cleaning up all his work. I mean, that's how it was for 45 years. He would step up to the plate, not necessarily be qualified, and then it would be all the women and the staff and the directors that had to do the work that for which he was being paid for. So this is nothing unusual.
So we're
I
good
can
at taking
remember,
delegation, is what you're saying. But how would you help this woman regain her power in that situation?
I would have her go and have a sit down with them and begin to discuss what her value is and how much money she should be compensated. What
Hmm.
I mean, was she getting a raise with this?
No, actually, she was not even made aware that she was getting a promotion until we were in an open forum meeting and it's being said in front of all of her colleagues. So no, there wasn't even time to even gather what the scope of work was going to be and the expectations for work. It instead almost cornered her to make it look like she owed that to everyone else to be that compensatory without there being any discussion of compensation for her financially.
So that doesn't bother me. The fact that they did that, I can remember at another company that I worked at, all the women always ended up cleaning the kitchen, and I finally complained. Like, we had a community kitchen, right? And only the women were cleaning up the kitchen. This was at right around 2000. And I remember saying, let's have a schedule. The men can also clean up the kitchen. Boy, they did not like it. But
Old,
I,
this is just old habituation, isn't it, with the genders?
exactly.
Okay.
So, as far as your person, I would be grateful. I would document all the wonderful things that she had done. I would keep track of any letters or emails of accolades. I would update my resume and I would begin to look for places that were looking for you. But I would also have a conversation and say, a straight conversation. But one thing I've learned from men, have a plan B. So, so the plan B is all those wonderful things that she did
Hmm.
that gave her that promotion, probably lateral, so there's no money, but because she did all the work anyway, let's call her a director instead of a manager. Be ready to leave
I
where
think
you
that that's valuable.
appreciate it.
Yeah, that is valuable advice because the truth
Thank
of the
you.
matter is that you are in a co-creative field when you recognize that there are always opportunities that may present themselves as a choice to exit because you have ascended to a new level of appreciation of your own worth and you need to reset the field around you to also be able to perceive your worth. Sometimes kids, if you think about youth, Leslie, I think this is a great example that all of our viewers will understand. They might have grown up in one small town, and by the time they're 15 and they're just past the awkward phase, all the kids in school know them as that kid, that awkward kid, that kid that didn't have the social skills, the kid that didn't have the money. But when
Yep.
dad moves with a job or mom moves with a job, and the next thing you find is that their braces are off, they're better looking, there's more money coming in. All of a sudden they're the rock star of the new school in the new town, and we get to reset our boundaries and our sense of self and others' perceptions of us. So I think that's grand advice. Really, it is take a step back, recognize that you can have a plan B, and as you develop that plan B or C, recognize that should where you currently are not choose to honor you financially for the value and the additional contribution you're making, you have a place to exit left or right and be able to, say, I left as a director and I am looking for the director's pay, and you can interest me for 20 grand more, and end of story. Kind of comes
Exactly
together.
right. And this also speaks to the law of sacrifice. So I bring in universal laws and principles whenever I can. So this is the law of sacrifice, which is giving up something of lesser value to make room for something of greater value. It could be that that is something of lesser value, and the new opportunity will not come until you make space for it. So I would be prepared, right? Plan B, you've done such a great job. And I would go in, and when you have that plan B, you have reviewed your own value, and you're changing your own vibration and context. I did a lot of good things here. These people really need to pay me because I'm really doing 3 jobs, right? Get your resume updated, go in and point it out, and just lay it on the line. Always remember, give a choice, and then don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them you want X money, and then zip it. Don't, the next person who speaks loses, which if you let them speak, you win. That's an old sales thing. The other thing is what you want is already moving toward you at the same velocity and vibration that you're moving toward it. So as soon as this person that you're speaking of gets her head together and starts calculating, boy, I'm really good at a lot more things. My resume now looks tighter. It's more valuable. I've got results from the work that I did, because that's what they want to see. They want to see the results in a resume. That will help inflate or raise your vibration, because you have a backup plan. There's kind of a safety net there for you. Mm-hmm. So when you go in to have the conversation, you're not going to lose everything. In fact, it may turn into a gift, just like it did for me. As soon as that 4th second, on that 5th second, I realized I'm out of here. Boy, this is great. These people don't want me anymore. Fine. I know there's someone else. And besides, I've been here a while anyway. I'm ready for something new.
I like it. Way to turn that very severe sour lemon into any kind of lemon dessert you could fantasize about at that moment. Because whenever there is an empty space created, Leslie, isn't it true that there is an opportunity to fill it with many other lovely things, or with one that is a much better fit for the level of growth that we are personally finding ourselves at? And I want to circle back around about these matriarchal societies, because interestingly, I'm going to try to pronounce these really quick and just indulge me. The Masuo tribe is in Tibet. The Minangkabau is in West Sumatra, Indonesia. Just so our audience understands where these matriarchal tribes are still functioning alive and well outside of westernized society. The Akan tribe is near Ghana. It's the Ghanese people. Bri Bri is actually near Costa Rica. Interesting. I was just there. The Garo tribe is in a North Indian state and close to the Tibeto-Burman borders. And then we've got the Negovizi. Gosh, I'm butchering this. I hope everybody's got a good sense of humor tonight. But they're in New Guinea. What is different about these tribes, where the women own the land, they manage the money, they run the tribal councils, they pass their wisdom and their power down to their daughters. They are considered, the true parent, because we know where that child came from. We don't always know in a patriarchal society. That's why we give kids names, but as short of a DNA test, you don't always know. What's different about them? They believed their value. They never lost their sense of value. They understood the intrinsic benefits that are more aligned with the difference between the feminine and the masculine gifts, assets, attributes. women have a tendency to be better negotiators, better communicators, because it's inherent in our survival skills. And we sometimes will see a spatial view rather than how can I forward myself? How do I win in this? Because I'm ultimately looking out for me in the game. And so I don't mean this to be in any way, diminutive of men. I'm just recognizing in a patriarchal society, we've had this business model. We have also had this political, we've had this military type of society. There's a whole
Mhm.
lot of, guns first and short tempers. As we balance this, we kind of bring it back into everyone seeing where their value is so that we work together. And I think bring some restoration. So I want to drive people to your closing statements and where to find your work, Leslie, because I know that ultimately you really want to see this come to a place where it isn't a power struggle. It simply is everybody showing up in their best self.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it is because I really believe that it is the collaboration of men and women, the best that we both have to offer that will make us the greatest success we can be, that will have companies improve their top and bottom line, that will have people living in abundance, wealth, health, and happiness, and being in energetic harmony with the universe, feeling good as much as possible. So, my work is taught in a high performance mastermind, which runs all year and opens at the quarter for new people. You can find information on that at Leslie, LESLIE-flowers.com. And you look on Mastermind Program and reach out to me. We start next Tuesday and it runs through the end of the year. Those are the 8 essentials of performance and achievement. Now, I
Wonderful.
have a women's group on Facebook called One Woman's Voice, and that's all thought leaders. So if you're a woman thought leader and you'd love to get into this conversation, I invite you to friend me on Facebook and find my group, One Woman's Voice. And also, you'll find me on Facebook at Leslie Flowers, Trailblazer for Women in Business. And that's about it. I would love to hear from anybody who wants more information. Head up to my site, take a look around, connect with me. I do have a couple of openings for next week, and I speak in the Research Triangle area and do workshops, and I give back. Once a month, I'm teaching at the Women's Resource Center of Alamance County because I believe in karma. And I'm loading up my bank account every month.
You're getting another rung in that professional halo, aren't you, Leslie?
Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, but it sounds lovely.
Well, I always like to wax poetic. It makes it a little bit more colorful, and it's always much more fun when I look back at these recordings and go, yeah, yeah, I don't want to keep saying the same thing. The truth of the matter is we really want to draw attention to our strengths and our offerings, Leslie, and I appreciate you doing so. I even want to refer our viewers to your book. It was her second Amazon bestseller, Champion. So take a look at Leslie's book too. But if we aren't bringing, thank you, there you go.
I just happen to have one. Oh, there we go. Better.
If we aren't seeing that where our milestones that became triumphs are having a direct benefit in society and our realms of influence, it's a short-lived, it's a short-lived ride. It's a short-lived trip. So I recognize that again, the goal is always to be seeing that the gift that we give ourselves in empowerment, in understanding what our value is, in demonstrating our value, and in seeing how that betters our life and those that we care for, those around us, inspires others. It is far more profound when we see that it is demonstrating exponentially, when it's part of the macrocosm, not just part of the microcosm. And you're desperate to say something, Leslie. Bring it.
Oh, I forgot to tell everybody. Okay, so if you're a person who could speak to awakening your infinite potential, I have got a telesummit online for you to grow your list and reduce the cost of client acquisition. I'm accepting interviews right now for Accelerate Experience 2018. It's an October event, third year in a row. And this year we're doing a telesummit on that subject. What does it mean, awakening your infinite potential? Reach out to me on Facebook or Leslie at pathsofchange.com. If you're interested, I'm accepting applications right now for that telesummit, and it's going to rock.
Okay. Well, I have no
Thank
doubt
you.
it's going to rock. Has anyone seen anyone this enthusiastic as Leslie on this topic? I can vouch for Leslie that she is passionate, but she is equally purposeful, and she means what she's talking about. And so just bringing this full circle, what are we looking to do with Solutionary TV? We have the solutions. We've got to stop behaving from a habituated and cyclical place that is the definition of insanity. Albert Einstein understands that particle entanglement is that we are all connected. If we see ourselves from a place of individuation, if we see ourselves as looking out for ourselves, any of these old models that do not recognize that cooperatively we get a lot more done, there's a place for everyone in society, and humanity is going to be a far much kinder and more progressive body of sentient life as we move forward in our own evolution, as we become spacefaring. It's really important to start with this conscious reflection and understanding our value so that we can recognize and address others. Please consider, because we want to keep bringing you Solutionary TV, take a look at being a patron or a sponsor. Go to solutionarytv.com. Take a look at some of the books that are there that I have authored, that my wonderful guests have authored, because every time we upload our site, we have got more content for you from each of our guests, all of their events, their speaking opportunities, their conferences. And remember that with all that we do, we are the solution. And I'm not going to cut there. I'm going to thank Leslie for being here. Leslie, thank you for being part of that. And again, thank you for being with us tonight. You're a wonderful audience. You are the solution.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.